Hello there, welcome back to the channel. And the first of my seasonal Halloweens, because Halloween is my goddamn Christmas. I love Halloween. You might know if you've watched any of my previous videos in previous years, Halloween is a big thing for me. So here we have the first of 3 planned episodes on Halloween movies. And they're my recommendations. You don't have to like them, but I decided that's what I'm going with. And I've had a good thought about it. I wrote them down in my notebook so that I can remember them. And these are films that I personally really like, and I think might be a good thing for you to sit down and watch this year. This is my list of a few good Halloween recommendations. Some old, some new, some you may or may not have seen. And again, it's first of 3 episodes, all of which will focus on a different, not genre, but shall we say style of Halloween movie. Obviously pretty much all horror or horror adjacent. So let's get started. This is not a ranking, by the way. This is just a few films I like that you might get a kick out of this Halloween if you want to sit down and watch something that might creep you out, scare you, or generally make you go, what the hell did I just watch? And we'll start that off with Willy's Wonderland. It's a 2021 film starring Nicolas Cage. Don't let it put you off. I have done an episode on this before. I can't remember if it was on this channel or on my sister channel, Nerd World Films, but I'll eventually import everything from that channel over into the podcast format on this channel anyway, so maybe here eventually. Willy's Wonderland is an awesome film. It's similar to another film that's kind of coming out soon, I'm not going to lie, but it's a great film. It's particularly made interesting by the fact that Nicolas Cage, his character, never speaks. The stranger, he just comes to town and he's just mute. He shouts every now and again like a grunt when he's fighting. Basically, his car gets disabled and he makes a deal to get it fixed to stay one night and clean this place called Willy's Wonderland so it can be reopened. What he doesn't realize, he's actually been sacrificed to the serial killers that live there, who have died and possessed the animatronic creatures that now reside within. And one by one, initially they try and kill him. He tears them apart, rips them to pieces. It's a great film, also with a sort of side story of this group of teenagers who kind of know what's happening and want to make it stop, who are trying to get in there to tell him to get the hell out. And you know, there's some interesting stuff happens there. It's a good film, and if you don't like it, I'm sorry, I love it. The next film is a movie called Wolf Creek. This is a little older and is a really mental film. And I'm going to, by the way, spoil the hell out of some of these films a little bit, but I'm going to try to limit that. So I won't tell you how the films end or anything. But yeah, just so you know, this is a recommendation, but if I let it on spoiler in, sorry. So Wolf Creek, some people get lost in the Australian outback. Sounds pretty formulaic so far. End up in the hands of a killer, and it's them trying to escape said killer. The formula is pretty damn simple. However, the execution is brutality. And if you, I'm not going to say it goes as far as Saw level torture porn, but this film is brutal. I mean, seriously violent film, and very graphic. So not necessarily scary, but you are sat there tense going, run woman, run. And for that reason, it's on my list, as is its sequel actually. Next one is a relatively new film, Megan. By relatively new, it's new, it's pretty new. Megan, it's your typical possessed doll level movie. It's not truly possessed doll, but you get the gist. It's basically AI gone haywire, trying to protect someone. It's extra creepy because that robot looks like a little girl, and it's just creepy. The dancing and the eyes, the dead robotic eyes. No, it's awesome. By the way, there's nothing I can say about it that's going to not spoil it, but it is a fantastic film. It's absolutely brilliantly acted and was a surprise hit for me when it came out, because I've been honestly disappointed by a lot of modern horror films until I came across Willy's Wonderland. I thought, hey, we're seeing a bit of a revival here, we're getting some decent movies. Not Looking at You, Blood and Honey, by the way. It's not on my list for a good reason. Next we've got, have you ever wondered what would happen if Superman was the bad guy? We got Brightburn. It's from a few years ago. It's basically about a creepy kid who pretty much got Superman's powers, but he's evil and he kills people. And how the hell do you deal with that? Because, he's not Superman, so kryptonite's not really an option. Brightburn is, again, one of those sort of came out of nowhere type movies. It's not an unpredictable storyline or anything, but it is a pretty interesting film to watch, especially if you're into comic book movies, but you want to see it kind of flipped on its head and you want to see a dark side, pun intended, I suppose, for Superman. And yeah, that's kind of what Brightburn is, and there's no escaping it. That's kind of what it is. But it's very interesting, and again, it's not a kid film. It's not like Smallville or something. It's actually quite dark. It's quite disturbing, and it's basically a little kid who you don't want to be evil, but what would really happen if you gave a kid the powers of Superman? I mean, really. The next film is Urban Legends. Urban Legends and its sequels, I might add, maybe not the second sequel, but certainly the first sequel. Although I'm a completionist personally, if you're going to watch the Urban Legends series, you got to watch the third one, if you really must. Urban Legends came out around that time when Scream had come out. Many considered it a Scream clone. That's not entirely true, but you can see why people would think it. It came out when slashers were at their height. You had I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legends, Scream, numerous others, sort of kids being murdered by guy with knife or axe or chainsaw or whatever around that time period. And yeah, this film slots happily into that genre, but it does it in a clever way. For what would be a low budget, not overly complicated movie from an outside point of view, it actually turns it on its head, and it takes scary myths, all those little stories, and turns them and makes it basically the killer makes them real. It goes out of his way and doesn't. It results in some pretty inventive and interesting kills, while at the same time making you guess the whodunit element, which is a very Scream thing, obviously. Who the killer is, why they're doing what they're doing, and who's going to be the next victim. It's a very good film, and it's sometimes, I think, a little lost because people see it as just a Scream clone, and people really like Scream, which they should, because Scream is a fantastic genre-defining movie in and of itself. This film doesn't get the love that it deserves, so I think this Halloween 2023, maybe give it another watch. Hell, give Scream another watch. But give Urban Legends a shot. If you've never seen it, you will enjoy it. And it's also, you're going to see, like, ooh, that guy, ooh, that guy, ooh, that guy. It's like people in it, pretty much. Okay, so the reason this film has made it to the list is basically because I think, although a lot of people watching this have probably seen the Urban Legends movies, most of the people I know who've seen them and interact with generally talking about movies, it's one of those films they've seen, but they haven't seen in a while. It's like they always seem to have seen it. I saw that a few years ago. I saw that when it came out. I haven't really watched it since. And I think it needs another revisiting. So this Halloween, another one. Next choice as a recommendation, we have got Event Horizon. This film should need no introduction. It was, of course, a box office disaster when it first came out. It stars Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, and a whole host of other people that, again, once again, are like boom, 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 boom. Those are people you know from somewhere. But it's a good film. It's an excellent movie. It's very dark and gothic and would fit in very well in the Warhammer universe. I'm just saying, even the way it travels FTL is very reminiscent of the Warp. It's basically a ghost story in space about a haunted, possessed ship trying to kill its crew in some pretty inventive and, again, very gory means. In fact, this film was so gory that there are infamous deleted scenes that unfortunately have been lost supposedly in a fire, where the film was so much worse. I've seen interviews with some of the people that actually did the background acting and did some of that work, and the scenes were so much more brutal than what we actually get to see in the movie, because it got cut back down because this film got an X rating. It was so vicious. And considering how quite disturbing the film is without those scenes, it'd be really interesting to see those scenes restored. Lastly, my recommendation is a film called Dog Soldiers. Again, we're going back quite a few years, but this is a great horror movie. It blends soldier film with werewolves. I mean, I think I should be able to just end it on that. I'm not going to, but I should. Again, it's got an excellent cast. It's a British film set in Scotland, and it follows a group of squaddies out on a training exercise who get a little, well, they bite off more than they can chew, and it's basically them then being stalked by werewolves, and there's some political intrigue going on behind the scenes as well, and it's very interesting as a very claustrophobic film, all set initially quite out in the open, but eventually ends up just in a house with them being besieged, and it's basically every schoolboy's dream of soldiers versus werewolves. Who would win? And this film finally answers that question. The next one I'm going to suggest is Jeepers Creepers. Any of them, to be honest. There are 3 of them in total, and the basic premise here is your average sort of monster, but it's done in such a clever way. Jeepers Creepers, the basic premise is a brother and a sister traveling through an area. They see what they think is a body dump, and that is actually the so-called eponymous creeper. It survives by every now and again waking up every few decades or so to hunt some victims down, which it picks very specifically for their body parts that it will use to replace its own failing parts. It can fly, it's kind of gross, but it generally appears as a sort of raggedy man with a hat and long coat on. And, you know, it's kind of like basically the creepy guy at the end of the street that you tell your kids to stay away from. That's the creeper. And it's a twisted villain in a lot of ways. It's very interesting and quite compelling. And the whole film, from start to finish, keeps you going. And it gets you invested. They've got great character development. The villain is pretty unique. And overall, it's a very enjoyable film with 2 standout sequels as well. And to be honest, probably could do with another film in the series. I wouldn't say no to it. And that is my little recommendation list of some horror movies that I personally really like and think if you've not seen them, you should give them a watch. I tried to pick a few from the sort of different genres of horror. So there's a bit of sci-fi horror, there's some body horror, and there's some just plain old horror. And once again, those are my list. Tell me in the comments below if you've seen any of these movies, if you like any of these movies, and go watch all of them just this Halloween.